Hey friends, Pastor Bill Walden here with Build Up the Church. This is a devotional word for October the 9th, 2024. This is out of Colossians chapter 3. I think so many times in the Christian life, we try to be a Christian. We see how Jesus lived. We have a desire. First of all, we have an admiration, first of all, for how he lived and his love and forgiveness and purity and heavenly mindedness and willing to sacrifice himself. And we want to emulate those characteristics and live that kind of lifestyle. And so some people set out to do that. That's kind of backwards, though, because we need to be born again. We need to be given the nature of Jesus Christ. And rather than trying to act like he did and think like he did and be like he was, we instead need to surrender our lives to Jesus and then let him live through us. And so it's really not like a self-improvement program rather than a submission program. And I even hesitate to use the word submission. It's a life of, program. I hesitate to use the word program. It's a life of submission and surrender. He gives us his impulses. He gives us his desires. He gives us power from heaven within our hearts and within our souls to live that way. He gives us the mind of Christ, the Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians. Everything about us is changed internally, or I should say, added. There's so much that is added. The old nature is still there. A death sentence has been pronounced on the old nature, but it's the time of death has not yet been announced, and but it's dying off, and the new man is growing in strength and power as we submit to Christ. And so the Apostle Paul in Colossians chapter 3 is simply telling the Colossians, in my estimation, in my view, hey, be what God has made you to be. And so we pick up the story here in Colossians chapter 3, verse 12, and once again reading from the New Living Translation. He says this, since God chose you to be the holy people he loves, you must clothe yourselves with tender-hearted mercy. I love that God wanted to choose me, and if you're a Christian, he wanted to choose you. That doesn't mean he took away my free will. I still had to willingly say yes. But the heavenly perspective is that he looked down and was pleased to choose me, and if you're a Christian, pleased to choose you. Absolutely loves the whole world, and salvation is offered to every human being on earth. But in a strange and mysterious heavenly way, he also chooses. And so Paul reminds the Colossians and us that we are chosen. Since God chose you to be the holy people he loves, you must clothe yourselves with tender-hearted mercy. Since this is who you are, then this is how you ought to be. Clothe yourselves with tender-hearted mercy. I was reading a commentary and it said, when we hear the word tender, it means to have a very sensitive touch to something. If you have a bruised arm, it's very tender. It doesn't take much to feel it. And so Paul seems to be telling us here, have mercy, but mercy that is very sensitive. You don't have to wait till the house is on fire before you respond. You see a slight need in somebody's life, and you're very quick to respond. Tender-hearted mercy. Clothe yourselves with kindness and humility and gentleness and patience. So, it's interesting to note what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, clothe yourself with brilliance and talent and humor and a big personality and a good catalog of jokes and have the ability to take over a room and impress everyone. He doesn't say any of those things. He talks about the internal things: mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience. Those are the things that a Christian is called to clothe themselves with, and he uses that metaphor of putting on things. And many times, in this world, people are trying to put on their best look and put on their best behavior and put on their impressiveness, and I don't think that God is too concerned with the externals. He's concerned with the internals in the lives of his sons and daughters. Verse 13, make allowance for each other's faults. Forgive anyone who offends you. Make allowance. I love that. It's a choice. Sometimes for me, probably for you, making allowance for somebody else's fault isn't my first impulse, but it's certainly a Jesus impulse, and I need to defer to that And I never regret it when I do. But sometimes it takes me a little time to get there, I confess. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. There's massive amount of reason why I should be ready to forgive others, because Jesus has forgiven me. Above all, verse 14, clothe yourselves with love. He's still using that metaphor of putting on love. Clothe yourselves with love, which binds us all together in perfect harmony. Verse 15 has been so meaningful to me over the years. And let the peace that comes from Christ rule your hearts. For as members of one body, you are called to live in peace and always be thankful. Let the peace that comes from Christ, let the peace of Christ rule your heart. That verb there, rule, it talks about, it's the same word if we were going to say, the official in the football game ruled that ball an interception, or ruled that his foot was out of bounds. That word rule is like an officiating referee in a match, calling something good or bad, in or out, foul or no foul. And so he says, let the peace that comes from Christ make those decisions in your heart. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say let your intelligence make those decisions in your heart. Let all the facts make those decisions in your heart. Let popular opinion make those decisions in your heart. Let the democracy make those decisions in your heart. Let the obvious wrongness of that other person make that decision in your heart. He says, no, when you make those decisions, and remember the context here is getting along with people. So if you have to make a decision one way or the other, let the peace of Christ rule your heart. That doesn't always mean necessarily who was right or who was wrong. So many times we want to argue about who's right, but Paul would say, why don't you be more concerned about what is right? Let the peace of Christ rule your heart. There are times where we just defer to one another. We accept the wrong. We do that thing that creates peace in the community of believers, rather than insisting on getting our own way, which might leave contention. Certainly there is a time to speak up and say, hey, that's not okay. But here Paul is talking about all these things. Let me go over it again real quick. Tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, make allowance for each other's faults, forgive those who offend you, God forgave you, clothe yourself with love, which binds us together. He's talking about community here, and he says, if a decision needs to be made, let it come from the peace of Jesus Christ, not the rightness or the wrongness of somebody, but let the peace of Christ rule. Oftentimes when we're making decisions, we have this logic, we have this logic. We have these facts over here, we have these facts over here. If I do this or say this, then this is going to happen. If I do this or say this, this is how it can happen. And sometimes it seems as though both, there's good reasons on both sides of the argument. But I've always thought, there's only one place where there's peace. So go follow the peace. Let the peace of Christ rule your heart. So some things to think about. Thanks for watching.